My Stitch Fix box is here. As a busy mom, I don't have time to shop. So I signed up for Stitch Fix. It was easy. I took a quick quiz to share my size, style, and budget, and they took care of the rest. My stylist sends 5 just for me pieces. This blazer. The fit on these jeans? Perfect. Keep what you love, then send back the rest. Free shipping and returns, and no subscription required. Stitch Fix. My stylist just gets me, and they'll get you too. Get started today at StitchFix.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
On this episode of Missing the Point, we sit down with NBC Sports Boston's own Abby Chin. We'll discuss her sudden return to NBC as the new host of Celtics pre- and post-game show, following a brief absence after serving 7 years as the Celtics sideline reporter. We'll also discuss the rise and fall of Kyrie Irving's tenure on the Boston Celtics, what's gone wrong for the season and the playoffs the last few years, and what she expects from them in 2021. But first, some housekeeping. Missing the Point is a 1-hour podcast recapping the biggest stories in the world of sports with a New England flavor. The show notes and transcript from today's episode can be found in the description box below, as well as on our website, www.mtpshow.com. If you're new to the show, please consider subscribing. It's the easiest way to see when we publish new episodes. We are on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to rate us and leave a review of any of our shows. We always appreciate your feedback. Let us know how we're doing and how we can sound better. Also, be sure to follow us on all of our social medias. All of our links will be in the show notes. And check out our brand new website, www.mtpshow.com. That's mtpshow.com. And now, this is Missing the Point, episode 26. But it's all relative.
Welcome to Missing the Point. I am your host, Michael Marcangelo, joined alongside by DK Sizzle, Dave Clarke, Rayshawn Buchanan, and today we have a very, very special guest. She currently hosts Celtics pregame and postgame coverage for NBC Sports Boston. Previously, she was a correspondent for the 2018 Winter Olympic Games. She also covered the Portland Trailblazers in Pac-12 football for Comcast Sportsnet Northwest. And before that, she covered Alabama and Auburn's national championship runs from the heart of the SEC at CBS 42 in Birmingham, Alabama. The one and the only Abby Chin. Abby, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Happy to be here.
So not a lot has been going on in your life over the last couple of months, huh?
No, not much, just hanging at home, being a mom. Is what I was doing for the past few months, although there was a lot of other things going on.
So obviously, like the big news broke recently that you are back with NBC Sports Boston. So tell us a little bit about that and just kind of what it was like for you to have, your fan base really demand that you come back.
Yeah, well, it's a very exciting time. I could not be more thrilled to be in this role. And it is something so when the news of the layoffs first came out and all of the fan support that I received then blew me away. And while I know that Celtics Nation is strong and mighty and very passionate, I did not know that there was that I had such a strong impact on that group of people. And so it meant a lot to me. It really lifted me up during that time. It was a sad time because I had my dream job for 7 seasons. I got to do, to cover the best franchise in sports. I traveled with the team. I was at every practice, every shoot around, and it just doesn't get better than that in this business. And so I was sad to see that chapter end. And then, as I just joked, I did try to enjoy the time that I had with my family. I have 2 young children, Mabel, who's almost 5 now, and my son Silas will be 2 in January. So I was just living the mom life. And then I found out that Kyle got the opportunity in Sacramento, and he was very excited about that. And I reached out to my former bosses and said I would love a shot at that job. I think I could be great at it. And they gave me a shot, and I did have to audition, but I got it. And so here we are, and I could not be more excited.
So what was it like auditioning for a role at a network that you had worked for 7 years? Like, they had tape on you. They knew a little bit about like what you could bring to the table, right?
Yes. I mean, I hope so. Yes. But I think it's a different job than what I was doing on the sidelines. And that's something that they have seen me do a lot more of for, like I said, the better part of 7 seasons. And so, and while I had hosted some during my various maternity stints and things like that, it's one thing to do it and just kind of fit in. It's another thing to do it every show for what we're, 82 games typically, plus playoffs, plus the preseason. And then also just working on that chemistry with Scal and everyone else that you're working on. And while I do have those relationships, Scal definitely treats Kyle and has treated Kyle differently in the past than he would treat me. And so I think it's kind of working on some of that and seeing what that looked like. And then they also, as far as I know, wanted to see what was out there and what's available to them and wanted to go with the best person possible.
During my prep for this show, my internet sleuthing on you, Abby, I came across an interesting fact. Mike just read off your list of amazing accolades and jobs, but I found out you were a production assistant on Monday Night Football. Is that the case?
It was, yeah. My first job out of college was at ESPN. It actually was at ESPN Classic, and I had submitted a resume for just an internship 2 years before that. And they called just before graduation and said, we have this job at a production assistant job at ESPN Classic, and I said, awesome, sign me up. I will be in Connecticut tomorrow. And it just worked out at the time. I will tell you, they were looking for diverse candidates, and I'm a diversity double whammy is what I like to call myself, being a woman in sports and then also with my Chinese heritage. So totally. It worked out for me. Yes. And then Classic dissolved and I got picked up by, they called it remote production at the time. And so I worked on Monday Night Football. I did the X Games. I also did the WNCAA tournament, which was really cool. It was like the only champion that actually gets crowned on ESPN. And so it was fun. It was a great time. It was only a year that I did that. And then I decided to make the jump to try to do on-air work.
I always find production assisting so interesting, not only because I did it for a long time in film, but also because it's such a broad job description, like it's when you get into it, especially in such a behemoth of an industry as broadcasting or any kind of industry that has production assistants, you have really no idea what to expect going in. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are, interested in breaking into larger industries. And like, was that intimidating for you when you first started off, where it's such a broad job description? Like I said, when you get there, it's like, you just do everything, like you run around, you do everything, you learn a ton, I'm sure. But like, is it in your experience, was it overwhelming when you were PAing or how was that for you?
Like I said, when I started it at ESPN Classic, which, if you don't know, was the arm of ESPN that basically focused on documentaries. They started doing sports centuries, which were the biographies on great sports legends. And then at the time they were developing these shorter shows. So the show I worked on was the top 5 reasons you can't blame. But a lot of my job description was sifting through old tape and film, and then also going through interviews and finding sound bites that would work. It was everyone kind of interviewed with the same background so that you could use it for multiple shows. And so that wasn't intimidating. That was something that I had done in internships. And when I went for my interview, actually, the manager pointed that out. She said, you do a lot of what we are doing here. And so that wasn't intimidating. It was different making the jump to the remote production because I hadn't done any of those before. And you bring up Monday Night Football, that is an enormous production, something that I haven't ever been a part of. They have 4 or 5 television trucks, one for the replays alone and however many cameras they have for that is just incredible how much goes into one production of Monday Night Football and how many people it takes. And so that was something different, but also something really exciting and fun. It was the first time that I got to travel regularly for work. And that was something that was really cool. And it was just, like you said, you do a little bit of everything. And then you also, depending on who you're working with, either pick up some of their slack or, get to learn from those people. And so it was just an incredible experience. It was also, when I lived in Bristol, Connecticut, I met my husband there. So we moved, from Bristol, Connecticut to Birmingham, Alabama, and then to the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon. And then now we're here in Boston. And so it's just, part of the ride. But it was
serendipitous then that you got that PA job. So it really worked out for you. I wonder if did that help you at all? What seems like culture shock going from sifting through tape into a ton of moving parts over at Monday Night Football, all this craziness happening, then going on to move from one place to the other. Did that help you when you landed, say, the Celtics job for the first time, like trying to get into the culture of basketball that we have in New England was probably a little bit of a culture shock, I would think, like you said, our fan base is pretty unique. Did that experience help you at all to try and kind of adjust and like learn, or was it just like, okay, I got to start from scratch here?
I wouldn't say I got to start from scratch, because I think every experience that you have leads up into these moments. The fan base here is very passionate. I would say the only place that I've experienced that has something similar is, as you mentioned it, Craig, the SEC and Auburn and Alabama football. It is, honestly, when I lived there, that's the most famous I have ever felt. People coming up to me on the street, asking me if I was going, headed to Kentucky that weekend. They knew my schedule. They knew where I was going. And, down south, you can't, if the time to go to a grocery store, if you don't want to see anyone, is on Saturdays, because no one leaves their home. They're watching college football. And so I did get to experience that. And then coming up here, this job, so I got into the NBA when we lived in Portland, because the Blazers are the only professional franchise that the CSN at the time, or now they're NBC Sports Northwest, had the rights to. And so I started hosting college football shows, and then that evolved into the NBA, and that's how they found me here in Boston. And I had done some sidelines, and I was originally hired here to anchor and report, which is something that I was used to, that I was pretty familiar with. And then making the jump to covering the NBA was a bit of a learning curve, but I was lucky. And then in that first season with the Celtics was also Brad Stevens' first season. And it was also the first season after they traded away Paul Pierce and KG. And so they won 25 games. But I tell this story all the time. That first season, the Celtics had, I think we either had 10 or 8 preseason games. So we did, and they were terrible. They had 25 wins that season. So none of their games got picked up nationally. And so we did all 92 games, and that had never been done before. So I got a lot of reps that first season, especially in the preseason with 10 preseason games. And so by the time the season finally rolled around, we hit the ground running.
It must have been so nice to come in with the new guard, though. Like, regardless of not winning a ton of games in that first season, like, it wasn't as if you were being inserted into a very like, I'm sure there was a lot that was established, but to kind of come in with a new regime and sort of get your boots on the ground with them at the same time was probably, like, I would think, a helpful experience now.
For sure. I had moved to Boston, I think about 6 months before. So I was here in January for that last stretch of Doc. And that's Doc, as you guys know, is such a great interview, a great person. He's just a lot of fun to be around. And honestly, when Brad got the job, I remember I was at a happy hour, and then the notice came through my phone, and I was like, what? Brad Stevens? That is bizarre. And then 2 months later, they were like, we're thinking about making some changes. Would you want to do this? And so, yes, it did work out, that all of that. But, you talk about the old guard, Mike and Tommy were still there. Right. And they're the ones calling the games, and they are the best of the best. But I am lucky in that they are also two great people. And so they welcomed me with open arms. as did the production crew. Paul Lucy is our producer, and he does everything. I mean, I talk about Monday Night Football and all the moving parts in that. Paul Lucy does, I think, about 5 different jobs that they had in this one truck for Monday Night Football. And he is just amazing at what he does. And he's been doing it for decades. And so they were really great to me in the beginning, and very kind, holding my hands through things and, giving me little tips and pointers there. And so they made the transition as easy as possible.
So how long do you feel like it took you to like hit your stride here in Boston? I ask that because I can't honestly remember like when you weren't doing the games. That's how you just feel like you're just a fixture here. So I wonder like if there was a moment when you were like, you know what, this feels right now.
I don't know. I know those first couple of seasons, and this might be too much information, but those first couple of seasons, I over prepared. I had like 10 to 15 storylines ready to go for every game. And, whatever I didn't use would roll over, but I would type them out on my laptop. And then I would also write them on a note card to like see it and the whole hits. And so it was on me to sell to my producer what was coming, but I felt like I had to be prepared for any and everything possible. I can still remember a Vitor Favarani hit that I had about him being ambidextrous and like throwing a ball with something, because I had written it on like 8 different note cards, because I was like, we're definitely going to use it this game. I got to get it. I got to have it. We never used it, but and so I did that, and for at least a couple of seasons. And then I think, and maybe this is true of many women, but I had Mabel in 2015. And so going through that, the pregnancy, and then going through the maternity leave, I think that was the first time that I actually like got a moment to breathe. And after that, I had to be more efficient in what I was doing. I couldn't sit there and take all day writing tiny and note cards. And that forced me to be better, because I also had to take care of another human being. And so I think that moment is when I really felt like I can do this job. I know what I'm doing, and I know that I'm going to do it well. Yeah.
You had mentioned before that you came in here with the new guard, right? And so you've been here since that 25 win season, all the way through, a couple of Eastern Conference final runs. You've been here through IT and through the guy that I want to mention now, Kyrie Irving, who has made some headlines recently about how he feels about people like us, more in particular you in the media, and how we will not deal with them because they're pawns. What was your experience like with Kyrie, and how do these comments like really make you feel?
He clarified those comments, saying that he wasn't specifically speaking about media, but I don't know if we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. What I remember about Kyrie is he came in on that first press conference day and was gregarious and so excited to be there. And I remember Scal and Kyle and Mike all introducing themselves. He's like, I know you guys, I've been watching you. He was great, and seemed really excited to be there, and, really had the charm on. And then just slowly over those next 2 years, it just kind of fell away. Yeah. I luckily was on my second maternity leave with Silas, that press conference after the shoot around in New York, where he said, I don't know anybody, anything. And I feel like that's really where the tides turned. And then I remember I told the story on air the other day. There was a practice right before their first postseason series in that last season he was here. And I asked him, what do you take away from those 82 games? Because they were all over the place that season and had really low lows and some really high highs where they looked amazing, like they did in that first round series against the Pacers. But I asked him, what do you take from those 82 games? And he looked above all of us, the scrum. You guys have all been in a media scrum, all of us. And he was like, all of this is irrelevant. And he was like looking above us and did not acknowledge, like didn't make eye contact, and was just like, and I think he was, at the time he was speaking about the larger outside world and distractions, but the way that he treated us and in that moment, and it was just, that to me epitomizes how Kyrie views the media and views the journalists trying to do their job. And then you saw it reflected again in his most recent comments. So I don't find them surprising. I do hope that eventually he figures out that, we're all trying to get to the same goal, which is grow the league. And we all have this passion. And while, yes, you may be an artist, I mean, people are just doing their jobs and finding their art in their own way. And so I hope he can eventually figure out and respect the jobs that everyone is trying to do.
Right. I mean, he's just someone that wants it his own way, though. That's just how he's always been. He was like that. He probably was like that at Duke too, or St. Patrick when he went to high school. He was just always like that. But I mean,
all the great work that he does for the community and for so many people, but it's also, you have been given this platform, and part of that is talking to the media and, all the things that has afforded you.
Right. So to kind of still stick with the Kyrie era. So obviously, we had another Eastern Conference run where, they fell short in 6 games to Miami. So just in your humble opinion, like, who do you think had a more disappointing season, like this year's Celtics or the 2018-2019 Celtics?
Oh, 2018-2019 Celtics by far. I mean, that team came in with, it's finals or bust, and they're going to challenge Golden State for the title. And so to fall off especially, and then like I mentioned, we had that up and down season. It really was all over the place. But then that first round series against the Pacers, where they dominated, they swept. I remember Jaylen Brown walking down the hallway with a broom and Terry talking post game, like, I've never swept anyone. This feels amazing. And then we went to Milwaukee, and that first game against Milwaukee, and they were incredible. I remember it was an afternoon game where everyone was like, Giannis has no idea what's happening. And then it just fell off a cliff. And with Kyrie trying to guard Giannis for long stretches for some unknown reason. And so to me, that was the most disappointing. I really thought we were going to the finals. I thought I was going to be on a duck boat with Mike and Tommy, and it was going to be glorious.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, I was so pissed at that team. Like, I remember going to some games late in the season. Matter of fact, I was at the game against Indiana where they actually sealed the 4th seed, because they was going back and forth, and Kyrie hits that game winning layup, and the crowd was going crazy, and they're like, yes. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, oh, we get Indiana, we're gonna run through them. I didn't think we were going to sweep them, but they did. And then I'm like, okay, when they beat Milwaukee, I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, this is about to be a cakewalk. Like, it don't matter who we face. Like, and then all of a sudden they quit, and it was just like, damn, like, really, like this is how y'all gonna go out? But it just looked like it was almost like they was in the bubble in 2018 and 2019 where they just wanted to leave. And it was just like, well, why would you want to leave this moment? Like, you had the talent. You say that you're healthy. Why not go out and try to win it? And then if you want to leave afterwards, go do that. But we'll leave it at that. Like I said, we exhaust Kyrie a lot over here in Boston because we're so mad at him. But kind of want to transition to this year's team, right? So so we have some people that left. So like Enes Kanter is now back in Portland, back in the Northwest. I know Brad Wanamaker's now in Golden State. So essentially coming in, now we have Tristan Thompson coming in, and we have Jeff Teague. So, just what was your thoughts about those additions, and do you consider those to be upgrades over what they had last year?
I think that the jury's still out on Jeff Teague, despite the incredible preseason game that he had to open the season, especially offensively. But I think Brad Wanamaker did so much defensively that maybe got overlooked, and just the calming presence that he provided in the locker room. And I know that Teague has so much of that veteran experience that he's bringing, but I think I want to see him do it over the course of a season and see what he's going to bring. And if he can bring that offense consistently off the bench. But I think that he's going to be really important, as we know, with Kemba missing so much time with that knee. And
what's up with that knee? What's going on with that knee? You got any inside info on that? Because you never want like you never want a weird injury for your star guard, right? Like when you kind of only get half the story, like, I think his knee's better. It looks, and then he plays like he played in that bubble playoffs. It's like, do you have any inside scoop? We can cut it out. We won't even tell the public. Just tell us if you know what's going on with that knee.
No, I wish I did. And the way that they describe it as well is they're just trying to strengthen everything around it. I think for me, the most alarming part was when he had the 4 months off during the pandemic and the layoff.
Right.
and then came back in the first couple of practices. He tweaked something and obviously didn't feel right, and obviously wasn't the same guy through the postseason. And he has said that. And he said how much it sucks not being that guy, because he's been waiting for those moments and that stage for his entire career, and then to not be at your best.
And so many Kemba moments came up, so many typical Kemba moments came up, and he wasn't able to kind of show us that.
Yeah.
I don't know though, because I'm kind of in between on it, because I feel like he had some good moments against Philly that first round, right? And then in the Toronto series,
points in one of the games.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then you get to the Toronto series, and I mean, he makes one of the best plays I've seen in a long time in the postseason, no matter where it was at. That bounce past the Tice to that should have ended game 3. And I mean, we went off in our group chat about that. I was so, oh my gosh. They know I was pissed off. I get mad just thinking about it right now. But it was just like, we weren't talking about that before game 3, I feel like, as much. So I'm just like, I feel like once they started to lose a little bit, and, they played, like, I remember that game 6 was like a double overtime. So I feel like once they played more minutes, that's when the knee became more of an issue. So, to me, it's just like, hey, y'all have to get the job done, right? We talk about it with the Patriots. Do your job and beat the teams you're supposed to beat. We have a resident Toronto Raptor hater over here in DK Sizzle, aka Dave. He thinks that Toronto wasn't.
I don't hate the Raptors. I just sorry, Abby. This is an ongoing plot line here that you're now like involved in.
I know, but hated the Raptors.
It's not that I hate the Raptors. I was backed into a corner because they kept trying to tell me the Raptors were good, and I just don't think that they're that good. So we got into a lot of things. Yeah, well, just in general, I thought once they lost Kawhi, I thought it was all over for them, and I was right. So like, here we are.
You say they were pretty good when they won.
Yeah. They were pretty good when they had, one of the top 3 basketball players on the planet on their team, but like not so much anymore. But thankfully, because we have a podcast, every stupid thing that I say gets recorded and then thrown back at me, because I also said a few weeks ago, and I know these guys are going to bring it up, I also said a few weeks ago we should probably consider trading Jason Tatum. And then Jason Tatum decided to come back.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you.
I understand. It wasn't a smart thing to say, but, for content purposes.
Something.
But then, of course, Jason Tatum comes back looking not 19 anymore, looking like a 45-year-old grown man, like with 20 more pounds on him and apparently 2 more inches. So I can just see that that's going to get thrown back in my face, which I'm a Celtics fan. Like, I want that to happen in some ways, but I think I'm going to hear about it for a long time. So, yes, I was wrong to say that, but I wasn't wrong about the Raptors.
Yeah, given that last season was the most interesting NBA season probably ever because of the bubble, right? I thought that that was the one league that figured it out better than any other major sporting league. So I'd love to hear like what your experience was like, especially because you couldn't do all the things that you are normally able to do like at the Garden. So what was the bubble like?
I wasn't in the bubble. I didn't get to go. I was outside, thankfully, especially because I have 2 kids. So I don't think that would have worked for me anyway. But it did. It changed everything. And we're still doing it, where all of the media availabilities are on Zoom. But like you said, typically, yes, I travel with the team. I wasn't on every flight just because of family, but I could have been. And but then, you go from the plane to a bus to the hotel and then back, and you just get little glimpses of the guys. But you also just get a feeling of being in those locker rooms. There is availability at every shoot around, and there's availability inside the locker room before every game. So you just kind of get a feel or a vibe. And we were not able to get that, obviously being outside the bubble, but it was nice in that we are the broadcast partner. I did get to do some one-on-ones and exclusive interviews and talking to guys. And it was interesting to me how much more not welcoming and not necessarily open, but they were like actually excited to see me. They're like, Abby, hey, nice to actually look at you in the face, and not just not just staring at some random camera, on a Zoom screen. And that was nice to know, I feel like they did. They missed us a little bit, we're there every day, but they definitely missed our presence a little bit. But it is, and it changes the job. And so it's not necessarily talking about the feelings or the vibes or what you're noticing on the sidelines. It's more of what the players are telling you. And you have to kind of that's the challenge, right? To get the most out of them in these settings. And so it was a different challenge. And, hopefully in, Brad's favorite word is versatility. Hopefully it made me a little more versatile in what I can do in this industry that is ever changing. But it certainly was, like you said, I think it was remarkable what the NBA did and for how long they had that in the bubble and just the undertaking and just how big that was and what a success it was. And now I'm really curious, hopeful, crossing my fingers that they're able to continue that success outside of a bubble and hopefully not have too many hiccups this season.
Right, agreed. But so kind of adding on to the interviewing part. So obviously, we talked about it. You've been here for 7 years, and you came in under the new regime. So who would you say has been your favorite player to interview in your time here so far?
One-on-one, it's probably Marcus Smart. He's probably
we knew you were going to say that. We called it.
But if we're going to go way back in inside scrums, I would say Gerald Wallace. And he was only here for my first season. But back in the day, Gerald told it like it was and was just like, we played like BS tonight, and this is what needs to change. This is who's doing it. This is what needs to stop. And those were the most honest conversations I think I've ever had in an NBA locker room. The camera was on top.
He gave us a pass on one of the good plays of that first season there. That pass to Jeff Green when he hit the game winner in Miami.
Okay, yeah,
that was one of the few good moments of that year. So I remember that. So no, that's cool. But yeah, I did call it would be Marcus Smart before the show. I was like, I thought so because everyone loves Marcus Smart, So why not? Yeah, exactly.
The emotions.
Given that this year's Celtics team has so much potential, right? And there is this feeling amongst all of us sports fans that the Eastern Conference Finals just aren't enough anymore. Like you just need to take that next step. What do you think the Celtics are missing, and have they addressed it in the offseason so far?
What are they missing? Another versatile wing who can guard any position, like a Gordon Hayward. That would be nice to still have Gordon Hayward. Yeah. And then also added Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague. I think that would be really nice.
Yeah.
I do like those additions. I'm really interested to see, obviously, one preseason game. I'm intrigued by Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Smith. I feel like showed some pretty nice flashes. And if he can be that sharpshooter that we've heard about, which is such a hard thing to do to make this jump at this level, which is what makes what Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson were doing in the Eastern Conference Finals last season so remarkable. Because I've seen them, the Celtics, try to bring in these guys. From James Young to I was in the building when Carson Edwards hit 8 threes in that preseason game, and everyone's like, "This is it, we got it." And it's hard to do at the NBA level and at a consistent rate. So I think that would be huge for Aaron Nesmith if he can be that knockdown shooter and someone to help them spread the floor and take some of the pressure off of Jason and Jalen. But I do think that you talk about the expectations. The East has gotten a lot better, a lot tougher. And then in particular, you look at the team the Celtics are going to face in their second preseason game, the preseason finale, in the Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And that just, if Kyrie can hold it together for one season, which he did here in Boston too, he kept it together for one season. I think they're going to be scary. And because it's freaking KD, even though he's coming off of an Achilles.
He's still going to be amazing though. Like you can just tell.
Right. He doesn't need his athleticism to be great.
Yeah.
Be at the top of his athletic game.
But he's also kind of a weird dude too, right? He's had his moments with like weird burner accounts and like media interactions also. So it might be wishful thinking on our part because we're Celtics fans, but like maybe they'll implode because of their personalities. Like who knows? Because if they don't, I think the East is already locked at this point, right?
Right.
With the Nets, by the Nets.
Yeah. That's 2 generational talents on one team. So it makes me a little bit nervous, but maybe I'm a pessimist.
So, what about Giannis?
Yeah, but to me, it's still just him. Like, I feel like people put a lot of stock at Chris Middleton for some reason. To me, he's a glorified Mo Williams.
Mo Williams was a glorified Mo Williams. I love Mo Williams.
Sure. Fine. That's another Alabama reference because that's where he went to school. But it was like he's okay. But he did when Giannis got hurt. Yeah, he got them a win in that series. But it was like okay, like why don't you do this when he's on the floor? Now, if he's getting 25 a game next to Giannis, now you got a problem because Giannis is going to get 25, 30 whenever he wants. And if you have two guys that can do that, that's different. But I don't see that. But everyone's still hype on Miami. Like, are you high on Miami? Like, just because they beat us? Like, I'm not. So
I don't think just because they beat the Celtics. I think that the Miami culture that you hear so much about is legit, and they proved that in the bubble. And I think that Tyler Hero is a problem, and Duncan Robinson looked like a real problem, and just their development and the way that they play, and so selfless and move the ball, and even defensively, even though they're running a zone that should be easy to break. Clearly, it wasn't.
Right.
And it should have been easy. It should have been especially easy for us. That was the strangest thing. Is we have versatile wingers who can shoot. Right. So like I just couldn't understand how we weren't breaking that zone down and just finding that space. But like I've been saying for years, I was totally on the bandwagon of Spoelstra just being elevated by having LeBron on his team, and like Mike famously on our podcast was like, I think Spoelstra is actually a pretty good coach, and I was like, no. And then of course. We see like a coaching masterclass from Eric Spoelstra against the Celtics. So they have him too, which is helpful.
Yeah, which is huge. So I think, there's someone, they're not going to be an easy out for sure. So,
no, I agree with that. I think there's some people that have them still above Boston because of what just happened. I feel like they're being prisoner of the moment, but that's what we do. We overreact, right? Like you said, people are already high on Payton Pritchard, and it's been one game. But I am too. I'm biased. Like I think he's going to be great, But it's just like I felt the same thing about Carson Edwards, and then he had a couple of flashes in the regular seasons, and he kind of just went away. So I actually want to go back to the Celtics. So because we touched a little bit about it with Gordon Hayward leaving. So thankfully, Danny Ainge was able to get a trade exception for him because, our group chat was on fire about him not getting anything for him. When I was like, hey, give it time. Something's going to come about. And it did, thankfully. So I know they can't use the full 28.5. I think it's around like 22 million because they want to be under a certain number for the salary cap. So, who were some guys would you like to see outside of Gordon Hayward coming back? Because I know he's already gone, but what are some names that come to mind that fit with that 22 million salary or under that you would like to see come here to Boston?
I mean, I know a lot of people talking about Harrison Barnes eventually being available. I think that Danny Ainge rightfully is in a wait and see mode. I mean, you don't know what this team looks like. Does Jeff Teague provide that scoring off the bench that they've been missing so sorely over the last couple of seasons? Does Tristan Thompson come in and take the starting job from Daniel Tice, and then you're actually pretty shored up in the front court when you can throw in a Rob Williams from time to time? And then, you are looking on the wings, which would be a Harrison Barnes, but I feel like you just don't know yet. And they're trying to figure out who they are. We want to see what kind of leaps and what kind of players Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be when they are put in this position. And we saw it a little bit from Jason, obviously, in the bubble. But Jaylen, I think, obviously, all we've talked about is him taking on more, having the ball in his hands, being able to be the guy. And I want to see what that looks like. And I think the Celtics do too. And then you kind of work around that and see where the holes are and then what becomes available. But like we've talked about, that I have been with this team throughout this whole rebuilding period. And it has been too many draft nights, too many trade deadlines where we're like, something's going to happen. And because they had all these assets, they're in every single rumor.
Yep.
And then,
nothing. Right. So, I guess it's pissed off. Right. Exactly.
Comes up empty. Yeah. And not necessarily empty. I mean, obviously, Jaylen and Jason worked out. Yeah. Danny made some moves with that. But, the night that Jaylen got drafted and was booed inside TD Garden because they were involved in so many different rumors and thought Jimmy Butler was coming and all of that. And so
that was me. Like, I listened.
For Chris Dunn, one of them drafted Chris Dunn so they could trade him to Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank God that didn't happen because, man,
So
I
am I'm skeptical that, something big actually comes of that. And I want to see what this team looks like.
Well, if they do, just as a personal wish list for me, I don't know how the other guys feel, but I want Aaron Gordon. Like, That's who I want. I think that from an athletic standpoint, he fits what Brad wants to do. Now, defensively, I think he's more of a liability. But if you can get either Gordon or even Vucevic, because like Orlando, they're not in purgatory, but it's like they're close. So it's like,
unless they know something we don't about that knee, though, because they did that with IT's hip. You know, like they like that was the last.
When you are in Orlando,
Danny's
it's hard
fleece.
to trade away your biggest star, and what are you getting back for that? You know.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, I saw some wild rumor about Kemba Walker going to Orlando for Vucevic and I think like Terrence Ross, and I'm just like, I don't know why Orlando would do that. I think as a Boston fan, I think you would maybe entertain that since they were looking to trade Kemba all off season
because he was coming off his first All-Star year, right?
Yeah, no, I mean that's true. I know, but there's no Kyrie coming back though. There's no Kyrie coming back.
And I don't think Kemba's knee has changed much from when they decided to pay him coming out of Charlotte. And that is something that Rick Bonnell, who's the beat writer for the Charlotte Hornets, reported, after speaking with Mitch Kupchak, Kemba's knee did play a part into why they weren't willing to sign him to that Supermax. And so you got to trust
injury prone is a little extreme. His ankle exploded
Celtics
on like game one. Like that's not.
I mean, I've heard of Rick Bonnell. I know because he did a lot of Celtic shows last year when Kemba came up and he spoke about Kemba's character.
I mean, I feel like we did talk about.
So I know he's a good reporter, but it's not on him. I'm not buying anything coming from MJ. If he said it about Kemba Walker and wasn't going to give him the super max, which would have been like $220 million, but you want to give Gordon Hayward 120, and he's been injury prone, and he just got hurt again. Yeah. Like, come on, I'm not buying nothing from MJ outside of his shoes. And then last year he got hurt in San Antonio when they were smacking San Antonio around. He got hurt.
He's no longer on the team, but like aside from that horrific injury, why do you think, Abby? Why did Gordon Hayward not work out here?
I don't think you can say aside from that horrific injury. I think that horrific injury on the first game that he was wearing green in a season that was supposed to be, headed to the finals, who knows, with he and Kyrie running mates, I don't think you can discount that. And as you guys were just saying, clearly it took him a while to come back from that. And I think it took him even longer mentally to come back from that. And then who knows, when you're an elite athlete like that, I don't know what that's like.
Me neither.
How you're overcompensating, doing things differently than you used to. The muscle memory has changed a little bit. And so I don't know if that, opens you up to other injuries.
He always looked a little nervous underneath the basket, I think, which is understandable.
I don't know always, but he definitely was. He was never the player here that he was in Utah, and how aggressive he was in getting to the basket, getting to the foul line, and demanding that level of aggression. And so I agree with you on that. That's why I say I don't think you can take away that catastrophic injury. And then you throw in all the drama, so then Kyrie's there for the next season. And is Kyrie really bought in? I don't think so. So I just, came back from this horrific injury, didn't know if I would play again. And now you don't even want to play. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I think it's all connected. And I do think that ultimately I wouldn't blame him if he was just looking for a change of scenery. And then also seeing the writing on the wall. He wants to be the guy. He was that guy in Utah. He left that because he thought that's what he was going to get here. And now it's Jalen and Jason's team. I should say Jason and Jalen's team. But, and so, and I don't blame him for getting the bag either. So.
oh no! I mean, listen, 120, baby. I'm walking too. I'm out of there. I'm going. But I'd like to say, it's just me. I'm not trusting MJ. Like, don't tell me you didn't want to pay Kemba, but you want to go back and pay Gordon Hayward, who had injuries as well. So let's not.
You see what you're missing with that star and not, or a big name in the league.
Yep. Yeah. I think for him, he was a guy that I wanted to work because he really wanted it to work too. I mean, he got injured this year. He had to leave the bubble, and then he chose to miss the birth of his most recent child to play. That's the guy that you want on your team and in your locker room. So for me to see that he's gone, I was really, really sad to see it. And you also just answered my next question, but I'm still going to ask it. So I apologize. It's Jalen or it's Jason. Whose team is this and why?
So talent ceiling wise, it's Jason's. Leadership in the locker room, it's Jalen's. And I think we're seeing that and just how much more outspoken he is. And I think that's a role that he that comes more natural to him and one that he wants. But I think the best thing about those two is I don't think they ever have that conversation. It's something that Jeff Teague pointed out. He didn't realize how close those two were. And while they've told us that it's taken some time for them to get to this point, I think they are really good friends. They want each other to succeed, and they understand that for this team to succeed, they both need to be the best at who they are and the most of who they can be. And I don't think that steps on each other's toes, as we've seen on the court over the past few years. And so I don't think they need to make that distinction. I think that we know in crunch time, the ball should be in Jason Tatum's hands, and Scowls all over me. But, some of those long threes that he took against Miami, I'm okay with. The numbers back it up. I mean, that's not a bad shot. And so
I'm so glad you said that, because I agree too.
Damn it.
Yes, I agree.
And that's what you want. And you want him in those moments for this season and the next season and the season after that.
Yeah, yes. Keep going. Yes.
So,
absolutely.
and
I think you got to give Jaylen Brown a lot of credit for that too, right? Because I think it would have been really easy for him to, because any elite athlete is going to think that they're the best guy on the court. Like, that's how they got to where they're going to be. Jaylen Brown spent his entire career being the best basketball player on most teams that he's played on, right? And I think that, he's had almost as many moments like in the regular season as Jason Tatum does. His athleticism is off the charts. I think it would have been really easy for him to get to kind of take his ball and go home when all the coverage was about Jason Tatum, when like all of his leaps were covered more than Jaylen getting better. He's a year ahead of him, on the team. He was there a year before Tatum was. And I think it would have been the easy way to just be like, oh, I should be the best guy. I want my own team, which is what a lot of NBA stars do nowadays, right? Like, a lot of them kind of kick up a fuss and go like, I want my own team. But instead, like you're saying, he found a way to work with them, and they found a way to work with each other and play to each other's strengths. And I think that, that's not easy for everybody to do. So I think Jaylen Brown deserves a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely. I think that 17-18 season with Kyrie and while Terry was still here. And I think that season was very humbling for Jaylen because his role was not nearly what he expected it to be, coming off of what he did in the playoffs, having to deal with that. And we saw that he struggled with it for the first half of the year, but something clicked inside him and he figured it out. He realized, that I don't know if it's, you can only control what you can control and that part of it. But I think that was really humbling for him. And I think that has changed his perspective and for the better and seeing and realizing what is possible when you do, play for others and it's not only about you.
Right. And I think it kind of clicked into my head as you were talking, but and this is really before, you were here and then, when all of us were much younger, but this duo really reminds me of Pierce and Walker, because Pierce wasn't comfortable being the guy that was going to be vocal until KG got here, right? But early on in his career, when they made that run against the Nets, it was Antoine that was the guy getting into people's faces. Like, and Jaylen's not that guy getting into people's faces, I don't think, that I know of, but he's going to be the guy that's going to be more vocal. Because
sounds like he did in the bubble. To Marcus.
Yeah, right. Him and Marcus, right, exactly. But I feel like
I wasn't going to say anything,
makes you do that. It might make you do that, so that's understandable. But I just feel like that's kind of what they remind me of. They remind me of that, of that duo where and like I said, Tatum may grow into that like Paul did. I don't, who knows, but like I said, it's good that they continue to play off each other, and hopefully it's just something that continues to play out in front of our eyes, that Jason becomes the man, and they become maybe the new Kawhi and PG. Who knows? But also perform better in the playoffs.
Kawhi and PG.
I mean, people think. I mean, people. Really, well, hold on. People were really excited about them last year, coming into last year, though. PG has to be much better in the playoffs. We know that, but I mean, Kawhi's a champion, and we wanted him here last year too.
I think Jaylen Brown's got Paul George qualities. Also, I think that he can I think when he hits really when he hits his prime, I think that he's going to be a very similar player to Paul George. Hopefully,
better,
not in the playoffs.
Hopefully better. Right.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
So, as we're kind of winding down here, Abby, I wanted to make sure that I talked a little bit about this because the world, but more in particular, Celtics Nation lost. I mean, its most prominent face earlier this year with Tommy Heinsohn, right? I mean, he was one of the best players in Celtics history, one of the best coaches, and the best color commentator I think that I've ever listened to. You never had to wonder where his allegiances were when you listened to a game. You always felt bad for whatever referee was in earshot of him. So I'd love if you could just obviously talk a little bit about your experiences with him. I know that there's a memory that you did mention in The Athletic, but I didn't know if you had any others. But also, like, how big of a force was he at the Garden day in and day out?
He is massive. Tommy is bigger than life. And you're right. This season is completely different without him. And that was apparent in the first preseason game. When I came in 7 years ago, I did not comprehend the legend of Tommy Heinsohn and who he was. I knew who he was as a basketball player. I knew about him. I didn't know, what he meant to Celtics fans, and to see it every day. I mean, the Celtics they used to do, Brad has changed it a lot, but it used to be a scrimmage in TD Garden for all of the season ticket holders. And Tommy, sits courtside, and it is just globs and globs of people that are just want to get a glimpse, just want to see Tommy and hopefully talk to him or get him to sign something. And then I also got to go to the Silver Circle Awards, which is a broadcasting award where Mike and Tommy were honored. And it was so interesting to me to hear people much older than us talk about how Tommy has just been such an enormous figure in their lives for their whole lives. Because, I mean, that's the thing, is that Tommy has been involved. He is the definition of the Celtics, through decades. And so to hear people talk about that, the stories, what they remember him wearing, the suits that he wore on the sidelines, or yelling at the refs when he was a coach. But then also everything that he did as a player. And so coming to learn that and understand that, I'm glad I didn't know it coming in, because I think I would have been much more intimidated, and I'm not sure I would have been able to talk to him and just go up to him as everyone has talked about, in the lunchroom or the media room at TD Garden, and be like, "Hey, Tommy, how are you?" But he was wonderful to me, and that's the story I told. I feel like he was never, I came in, he didn't know who I was and how much experience I had or anything. And he never made me feel like I didn't know. He never made me feel like I wasn't a part of the team. And that was wonderful to me. And it was huge. It was huge for, you say you don't remember games when I wasn't on him. I think it's the fact that Mike and Tommy respected me and welcomed me in and talked to me like I was a part of the team. It made a huge difference. And if they didn't see that in me, I don't think I'd still be here. And the story I did tell to Steve Buckley of The Athletic was during my first maternity leave, and I was super pregnant. And I was going into the studio because I just could not walk on the sidelines anymore. And I went into the lunchroom and I said, "Tommy, you're stuck with me for the next couple of weeks." And he said, "Don't worry about it, darling. We will make beautiful television," or something along those lines. And he was just so coming. He's like, and it just made you realize, what a great teammate he was. I knew he was there for me. He was going to help me through that. And he's just fun. He's a happy guy. My biggest regret is that I didn't get to go on the road with Tommy, because the stories that he tells and the stories that everyone tells about him just at dinners and are epic. And I think it just would have been so much fun. And what blows my mind is that Tommy, for just how incredible he was as a player, that he had to have a summer job. There's stories that he came back, he had been loading either loading up trucks or loading up boats in a dock, and he came back stronger, and he was clanking off the backboard. Yep. And Red was like, "Stop working out, no more lifting weights for Tommy." And he quit playing to sell insurance because he was making more money doing that, and he had a family to support. And then they roped him back in to coach. So yep. He is a figure who is larger than life, and he will be missed forever. but he will always be a part of the organization as well.
Yeah, and he was an amazing painter too. I think you know that, right? He was like I did not know that. I have like a family connection with him. I'm not related, but he gave one of my uncles a painting, and I was like, "Who painted this?" And it's signed like Tommy Heinsohn. I'm like, "That's unbelievable!" Like most people like ask for a jersey signed by him. We have a watercolor painting, which is just it's amazing. He was a great human, great coach, and just you notice that he's not there, and that's something that to be said about him in sports, in today's media where everything is so fast paced. You stop and you notice that Tommy Heinsohn is no longer calling the games or on the games. So I know that we do have to wrap up. One last question, actually 2 last questions. I lied. What are your expectations for the Celtics this year? Where are they going to finish?
I mean, this is Boston. The expectation is banner number 18.
Love that.
I do think I will be disappointed if they don't make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, just because I want to see Jason and Jalen get that much better that they then can, carry this team where.
Do you think that's in their head at this point, going to the Eastern Conference Finals this many times and not being able to get over that hump?
No, I don't think.
No, thank God. It's in mine.
Right.
Just for me, as covering this team and being around them, every series is its own entity. And so, no, to me, it's not like, we have this wall. I think that there's, it's with all the free agents. It's circumstantial, and every circumstance has been different.
So obviously, sorry. Obviously, we can find you on pre and post on NBC Sports Boston. But for all the listeners out there, where can they find you on social media if they want to learn a little bit more about you?
At TV Abby. I'm on Instagram, Twitter. That's really it. I did Snap for a while, but that died.
Oh, you have 2 children. I think 2 social media accounts is plenty.
Yeah, priorities.
Working on it. Yeah. And Kyle used to go live, I think, on Instagram, like before.
Yeah, on Twitter too.
Oh, was it on Twitter or was it on Instagram?
It might have been both, but yeah.
Yeah, either one. So I'm going to try and keep that alive a little bit so you guys can catch a real glimpse of Scal, what he's really like. I don't know if people want to see that, but no. Scal and Forsberg will be on the show, and Chris Mannix will be doing some.
Big Perk.
And Perk, of course, Perk. I love Perk so much. We did those things during the pandemic. It was the game show.
The Celtics census.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun. They were the highlights of my week.
Yeah, you guys were killing it.
Yeah, we won 6 straight. We beat Kyle and Scal twice, and they still did.
Yeah, and I know Danny Ainge and Marcus Smart tried to be a team too, but they failed too. So
they lost, and so did Danny. Talked about it all summer. Everyone was like, "Danny's still mad. You guys beat him at Celtics."
He doesn't like to lose. He does not like to lose.
He definitely is one of those hates to lose more than he loves to win. I think for sure.
Well, Abby, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It was awesome having you. We were just so lucky to be able to talk to you, and obviously we're so happy to have you back at NBC Sports Boston to be able to watch you for pre and post. So for DK Sizzle, Dave Clarke, Rayshawn, Buchanan, the best producer, Craig D'Alessandro, I am Michael Marcangelo signing off for Missing the Point. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Missing the Point. Missing the Point is a 1-hour podcast recapping the biggest stories in the world of sports with a New England flavor. The show notes and transcript from today's episode can be found in the description box below, as well as on our website, www.mtpshow.com. If you're new to the show and enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing. It's the easiest way to see when we publish new episodes. We are on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to rate us and leave a review of any of our shows. We always appreciate your feedback. Also, be sure to follow us on all of our social medias. All of our links will be in the show notes. And check out our brand new website, www.mtpshow.com. That's mtpshow.com. For all of us here at Missing the Point, I'm Craig D'Alessandro. We'll talk to you next time.
Miles, are you ready to record our promo for Season 2 of the Wanna Bet podcast?
David, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Miles, we're not here to quote lines from Airplane. We're here to tell people that Season 2 starts August 18th.
But I like Airplane.
I know you do, but Wanna Bet is a sports betting podcast. Each week we bet $1,000 on the NFL teams and games that we love.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It is fun. And last year you picked over 60% of your games correctly.
How'd you do?
We're not talking about that. We are telling people that they can find us every Friday. So no more movie quotes.
Roger.
Electricast.
Miles, are you ready to record our promo for Season 2 of the Wanna Bet podcast?
David, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Miles, we're not here to quote lines from Airplane. We're here to tell people that Season 2 starts August 18th.
But I like Airplane.
I know you do, but Wanna Bet is a sports betting podcast. Each week we bet $1,000 on the NFL teams and games that we love.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It is fun. And last year you picked over 60% of your games correctly.
How'd you do?
We're not talking about that. We are telling people that they can find us every Friday. So no more movie quotes.
Roger.
Electricast.